Victoria Chun stood frozen in the rain, watching her daughter kiss the man she paid minimum wage to mop her floors. The words forming on her lips would either destroy 3 lives or save them all, and she had exactly 5 seconds to decide which. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The rain came down in sheets, turning the executive parking lot into a mirror of fractured city lights. Victoria Chun stood frozen under the elegant portico of Sterling Tech headquarters, her hand pressed against her mouth, eyes wide with something that looked like shock but felt like recognition. 20 feet away, illuminated by the amber glow of a street lamp, her daughter Emma was wrapped in the arms of a man in a gray maintenance uniform, their lips meeting with the kind of desperate tenderness that made the world disappear. The rain soaked them both, plastering Emma's dark hair against her face, turning the janitor's shirt transparent against his skin. They were completely oblivious to everything except each other, and Victoria knew with absolute certainty that whatever words came out of her mouth in the next 30 seconds would change all of their lives forever. But to understand why the CEO of a billion-dollar tech company didn't immediately fire the man kissing her daughter, you have to go back 3 months. To a Tuesday morning that started with a lie and ended with a broken promise. Victoria Chun had built Sterling Tech from a garage startup to a Silicon Valley powerhouse in 15 years. She was 42 years old, divorced for 6, and lived by a set of rules so rigid they could have been carved in titanium. Rule number 1 was simple and absolute: work and family never mixed. Her daughter Emma, 23 and fresh out of graduate school, had wanted to work at Sterling Tech since she was a teenager, but Victoria had been immovable. The answer was no, had always been no, and would remain no until the end of time. It wasn't personal, it was protective. Victoria had seen too many family businesses torn apart by nepotism and entitlement. She had fought too hard to build something based on merit and excellence to compromise it now, even for her own daughter. Emma had accepted the rejection with grace, or at least with silence, and taken a position at a rival firm across the city. But Victoria could see the hurt in her eyes every time they had dinner together, could feel the growing distance between them like a physical wall. It was the price of integrity, Victoria told herself. It was the right choice, even if it felt like slowly cutting off her own arm. On that Tuesday morning, Victoria arrived at Sterling Tech at 6:30, the way she always did. The building was still mostly dark, occupied only by the night security guard and the cleaning crew. She liked these quiet hours before the chaos began, when she could walk through the empty halls and feel the pure potential of the day ahead. She was heading toward the executive elevator when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong. Music, faint and tinny, coming from somewhere on the 3rd floor. She changed direction, her heels clicking sharply against the polished concrete, following the sound to the research and development wing. The door to Lab 7 was propped open with a maintenance cart. Inside, a man was mopping the floor with methodical precision, earbuds in, completely absorbed in his work. He was tall and lean, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and the kind of face that suggested he smiled easily, though he wasn't smiling now. He was focused entirely on his task, moving the mop in smooth, practiced strokes, and there was something almost meditative about the way he worked. Victoria watched him for a moment, struck by the unexpected grace of it. She cleared her throat. The janitor jumped, yanking out his earbuds. His eyes went wide when he saw her standing in the doorway in her tailored black suit, her arms crossed. He recognized her immediately. Everyone at Sterling Tech knew Victoria Chun by sight, even if she didn't know them. "I'm so sorry, Miss Chun," he stammered, his face flushing. "I didn't hear you. I'll finish up quickly and get out of your way." His voice was deeper than she expected, with a slight rasp that suggested too many late nights or too many years of keeping quiet. "But what are you listening to?" Victoria asked. It wasn't the question he was expecting. He glanced down at the phone clipped to his belt as if trying to decide whether to answer honestly. "Jazz," he said finally. "Miles Davis. Kinda blue. It helps me think." Victoria raised an eyebrow. Most people listen to music to avoid thinking. He smiled then, a small, genuine expression that transformed his entire face. "I guess I'm not most people." He went back to mopping, clearly hoping she would leave, but Victoria didn't move. There was something about him, something in the careful way he worked, the old-fashioned politeness, the unexpected answer. She found herself curious. "You're new here," she said. It wasn't a question. He nodded. "Started 2 weeks ago. The graveyard shift, midnight to 8. The hours nobody else wants." "Why?" Victoria asked. "Why take the hours nobody wants?" He paused mid-stroke, his knuckles white on the mop handle. "Because nobody bothers you," he said quietly. "You can just work and think and be invisible." It was an answer that felt like a confession. Victoria studied him for another moment, then nodded once and turned to leave. As she walked away, she heard him put his earbuds back in and resume his work, the soft swish of the mop fading behind her. She thought about him for exactly 10 seconds. registered him as someone competent and unobtrusive, and then dismissed him from her mind entirely. She had more important things to focus on. She had no way of knowing that the invisible janitor would become the most important person in her daughter's life, or that his presence would force her to question every rule she had ever lived by. 3 days later, Emma came to her office unannounced. It was a Friday afternoon, and Victoria was buried in preparation for a board meeting, her desk covered in financial reports and strategic projections. She looked up when her assistant knocked, and her expression softened immediately when she saw her daughter standing in the doorway. Emma looked pale and drawn, her eyes red-rimmed as if she had been crying. "Mom," she said, her voice small and fragile, Can we talk? Victoria was around her desk in an instant, guiding Emma to the leather couch by the window, her CEO persona falling away to reveal the mother underneath. What's wrong? She asked, gripping Emma's hand. Did something happen at work? Emma shook her head. I quit. Today I walked out in the middle of a meeting and I'm never going back. Victoria felt her stomach drop. Emma had only been at the firm for 8 months. She had worked so hard to get that position, had been so excited when they hired her. What happened? Victoria asked, trying to keep her voice calm and neutral. Emma took a shaky breath. There was a man, a senior partner. He's been making comments for months. Inappropriate things. I tried to ignore it. I tried to handle it professionally. But today he cornered me in the break room and he put his hands on me and I couldn't. She started crying, silent tears streaming down her face. I told HR, they said they would investigate, but I could see it in their eyes. They didn't believe me. Or worse, they did believe me and they didn't care because he brings in too much money. So I left. Victoria felt a white-hot rage ignite in her chest, the kind of fury that made her want to burn the world down. She pulled Emma into her arms and held her while she cried, her mind already spinning through options and consequences. She could make some calls. She could destroy that man's career with a single well-placed conversation. She could make sure he never worked in this industry again. But Emma pulled back, reading her mother's expression. Don't, he said. Please, I just want to forget about it. Just want to move on. Promise me you won't do anything. Victoria wanted to argue, wanted to explain that men like that needed to face consequences. But she saw the exhaustion in her daughter's eyes and held her tongue. Okay, she said softly. Promise, but you need to let me help you. You need money. You need time to figure out your next move. Emma shook her head stubbornly. I don't want your money, Mom. I don't want your connections or your strings or your control. I just want to stand on my own 2 feet for once in my life. She stood up, wiping her eyes. I have savings. I'll be fine. I just wanted you to know. She left before Victoria could respond, the office door closing with a soft final click. Victoria sat alone in her office as the sun set outside her window, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. She felt utterly helpless. A sensation so foreign and uncomfortable it made her want to scream. Her daughter was hurting, and there was nothing she could do to fix it. All her power, all her influence, all her carefully constructed rules meant nothing in the face of Emma's pain. She stayed late that night, long after everyone else had gone home, trying to lose herself in work. It was almost midnight when she finally gathered her things and headed for the elevator. The building was dark and silent, the way it always was at this hour. As she passed Lab 7, she saw light spilling out from under the door. She pushed it open and found the janitor there again, his cart beside him, mopping the same floor she had seen him clean days before. He looked up when she entered, pulling out his earbuds. Working late, Miss Chun, he said. His tone was polite, but there was a knowing quality to it, as if he recognized the weight she was carrying. Victoria nodded, suddenly too tired to maintain her usual professional distance. My daughter quit her job, she said. The words came out before she could stop them. She was harassed by a senior partner and she quit rather than fight. The janitor set down his mop. I'm sorry, he said. That must be hard for both of you. Victoria looked at him sharply, expecting to see pity or judgment, but his eyes held only quiet understanding. Why are you still here? She asked. Your shift ends at 8. He shrugged. Sometimes I stay late. The work helps clear my head. Plus, I'm avoiding going home to an empty apartment. It's easier to be here. Victoria understood that feeling more than she wanted to admit. They stood in silence for a moment. 2 people working through the night to avoid their own thoughts. What's your name? She asked. Marcus, he said. Marcus Holland. And before you ask, yes, I know it's weird to mop the same floor twice in 1 week. Like things clean. Victoria found herself smiling despite everything. I appreciate that, Mark. This whole building could use more people who care about doing things right. Marcus picked up his mop again. For what it's worth, Miss Chun, your daughter sounds brave. Walking away from a bad situation takes more courage than fighting sometimes, especially when you know people won't believe you. Victoria felt something shift in her chest, a small crack in the armor she wore. Thank you, she said quietly. That means more than you know. She left him there in the darkened lab, the soft swish of his mop following her down the hall. She had no idea that Marcus and Emma had already met. That very afternoon in a coffee shop 3 blocks from Sterling Tech, both of them sitting alone at separate tables, both nursing their wounds in silence. She had no idea that Emma had dropped her phone and Marcus had picked it up, that they had started talking, that something had sparked between them in that moment of chance and kindness. She had no idea that her world was about to be turned completely upside down by the invisible janitor and her wounded daughter, or that the rules she had built her entire life around were about to crumble into dust. All she knew was that Marcus Holland had seen her vulnerability and hadn't used it against her. And in Victoria Chun's experience, that made him a very rare person indeed. Emma Chun had always believed in signs. Her mother called it magical thinking, a character flaw that would hold her back in the ruthless world of business. But on the afternoon she walked out of her job, humiliated and furious, she needed to believe that the universe was trying to tell her something. She had fled the office building in a daze, her mind replaying the moment in the break room over and over, the senior partner's hand on her waist, his breath against her ear, the casual cruelty of his words. When she told him to stop, he had laughed and said she should be grateful for the attention. When she threatened to report him, he had smiled and told her to go ahead. Everyone knew she was Victoria Chun's daughter. Everyone would assume she was just another entitled rich girl who couldn't handle the real world. So she had gathered her things, walked out, and kept walking until her legs ached and her mind went quiet. She found herself in a small coffee shop she had never noticed before, tucked between a dry cleaner and a bookstore. And the place was nearly empty, just a barista reading behind the counter and one other customer, a man sitting alone by the window. Emma ordered a black coffee she didn't want and sat at a table in the corner, pulling out her phone to avoid looking at anything or anyone. She was scrolling mindlessly through her contacts, trying to decide who to call, when her phone slipped from her trembling fingers and skittered across the floor. It landed at the feet of the man by the window. He looked down, then over at her, and she felt her face flush with embarrassment. Just another thing going wrong in a day that had already gone catastrophically sideways. But the man simply picked up her phone, stood, and walked over to her table. His movements were careful and deliberate, as if he didn't want to startle her. "I think you dropped this," he said, holding out the phone. His voice was gentle, and when Emma looked up at him, she was struck by his eyes. They were a deep brown, warm and kind, with the sort of sadness in them that suggested he understood what it was like to have a very bad day. "Thank you," she managed, taking the phone from him. Her hands were still shaking. The man hesitated, as if deciding whether to say more. "Are you okay?" he asked. It was a simple question, but the genuine concern in his voice made something crack inside her. "No," she said, surprising herself with her honesty. "I'm really not." He nodded slowly, as if she had confirmed something he already suspected. "Do you want to talk about it, or do you want me to leave you alone? Those are both valid options." Emma found herself laughing. A short, bitter sound. "I don't even know you." He smiled, a small, sad expression. "Sometimes that makes it easier. Strangers don't have expectations." He gestured to the empty chair across from. "I'm Marcus. I'm having a bad day too. Not as bad as yours, I'm guessing, but bad enough. If you want company, I'm here. If not, I'll go back to my corner and we can both pretend this conversation never happened." There was something about him, something in the quiet way he spoke and the careful way he held himself, that made Emma feel safe. She gestured to the chair. "Sit, please. I'm Emma." He sat down, wrapping his hands around his own cup of coffee, waiting. Emma took a breath. "I quit my job today. I walked out in the middle of the afternoon because a man put his hands on me and I couldn't stay there another second." Marcus's expression darkened. "I'm sorry. That's not a bad day. That's a betrayal." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "The worst part is I feel like I failed. Like I should have been stronger or smarter or braver. Like if I had just handled it better, I wouldn't have had to leave." Marcus shook his head firmly. "No, you didn't fail. He failed. The company failed. The system that protects men like that failed. Walking away when something is toxic isn't weakness, Emma. It's survival." The conviction in his voice startled her. She studied him more carefully, taking in the worn jacket, the calloused hands, the bone-deep weariness that seemed to live in his shoulders. "You sound like you know something about walking away." He was quiet for a long moment. "I do. I walked away from my whole life 3 years ago. I was a professor. Literature. I loved it. I was good at it. But there was a scandal at the university. A colleague was accused of plagiarism and academic fraud, and I was asked to testify against him. He was my friend, or I thought he was. When I told the truth, he tried to destroy my career. He spread rumors, manipulated evidence, turned the department against me. I could have fought it. I could have hired lawyers and dragged it out for years. But I was so tired, Emma. So tired of the politics and the betrayal and the way everything I had built was being used as a weapon against me. So I walked away." Emma stared at him. "And now," he shrugged, "now I work nights as a janitor. I clean floors and empty trash cans and try not to think about the person I used to be. It's not the life I planned, but it's honest work and nobody asks me to compromise my integrity. That's worth something." Emma felt a kinship with this stranger that she hadn't felt with anyone in months. "You must think I'm ridiculous. Complaining about one bad job when I have every advantage in the world. My mother is Victoria Chun. I'm sure you've heard of her." Marcus's eyes widened slightly. "The Victoria Chun, the CEO of Sterling Tech." Emma nodded, bracing herself for the judgment or the sudden shift in his demeanor that always came when people learned who her mother was. But Marcus just smiled. "That must be complicated." "It is," Emma admitted. "She wants me to be strong and independent and successful, but she also wants to control every aspect of my life. She wouldn't let me work at her company because of some rule about nepotism, so I had to go somewhere else to prove myself. And now I've failed at that too." "You didn't fail," Marcus said again more firmly. "You survived. There's a difference." They talked for 2 hours, the coffee shop emptying around them as the afternoon faded into evening. Emma told him about growing up in the shadow of her mother's success, about the pressure to be perfect and the fear of disappointing the one person whose opinion mattered most. Marcus told her about his ex-wife, who had left him when he quit his job, unable to understand why he would throw away everything they had built. They talked about loss and compromise and the impossible weight of other people's expectations. When Emma finally looked at her phone, she was shocked to see it was almost 7. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "Thank you for this. For listening. I needed it more than I realized." Marcus stood when she did. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Maybe for coffee that doesn't involve one of us having the worst day of our lives." Emma felt something flutter in her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. "I'd like that." They exchanged numbers, and when Emma walked out into the cooling evening air, she felt lighter than she had in months. She had no idea that Marcus worked at her mother's company, just as he had no idea that the beautiful, sad woman he had just spent the afternoon with, was the daughter of the CEO, who passed him in the hallways like he was invisible. Over the next 3 weeks, they met 6 more times. Coffee turned into dinner, dinner turned into long walks through the city, and walks turned into late-night conversations on Emma's apartment steps, neither of them wanting to say goodbye. Marcus told her about his love of jazz and old poetry. Emma told him about her dreams of starting her own company someday, something small and meaningful where she could build a culture of respect and integrity. They talked about everything except their work. It was an unspoken agreement. In those hours together, they could be just Marcus and Emma, 2 people finding their way through the wreckage of their old lives and tentatively building something new. It was on their 7th meeting, a rainy Tuesday evening, that Emma finally asked the question that had been nagging at her. "Where do you work, Marcus? You've never said." He hesitated, and she saw something like fear flash across his face. "It doesn't matter. It's just a job." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "It matters to me. I want to know you. All of you. Not just the parts you think I want to see." Marcus took a deep breath. "I work at Sterling Tech, night shift. I'm a janitor." The words hung in the air between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. Emma blinked, her mind racing. "You work for my mother." He nodded, his jaw tight. "I didn't know who you were when we met. I swear. And when I figured it out, I thought about telling you, but I was afraid you would disappear. I was afraid this would end before it even started." Emma pulled her hand back, her thoughts a chaotic swirl of shock and confusion. This is complicated." He stood up abruptly. "I know. I'm sorry. I should go. This was a mistake." "No," Emma said quickly, grabbing his wrist before he could leave. "Sit down, please." He sat slowly, his eyes searching her face. Emma took a shaky breath. "My mother has a rule. Work and family never mix. If she finds out about this, about us, she'll lose her mind. So we don't tell her," Marcus said quietly. "Not yet. Not until we figure out what this is." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to say that secrets always came out and lies always unraveled, but when she looked at Marcus, at the hope and fear in his eyes, she found herself nodding. "Okay, we don't tell her. Not yet." It was the first promise she made to him and the first lie she told her mother. Neither of them realized how quickly those 2 things would become the same thing, or how high the cost would be when the truth finally came crashing down around them. All they knew was that in a world that had taken so much from both of them, they had found something rare and precious, and they weren't ready to let it go. Not yet, not ever. Victoria noticed the change in her daughter immediately. Emma had always been easy to read, at least to her mother's trained eye. When she was happy, she practically glowed. When she was sad, she retreated into herself like a turtle pulling into its shell. But this was different. Over the past month, Emma had transformed into something Victoria had never seen before. She was radiant but secretive, constantly checking her phone with a small smile playing at her lips, disappearing for hours without explanation. When Victoria asked where she had been, Emma would give vague answers. Just out with a friend, just taking a walk, just needed some time to think. Victoria wanted to be happy about it. After the disaster at Emma's previous job, she had been terrified her daughter would spiral into depression or bitterness. Instead, Emma seemed to be healing, becoming stronger and more confident with each passing day. She had started sending out resumes again, this time being selective and deliberate about where she applied. She talked about her future with an excitement Victoria hadn't heard in years. Something or someone had breathed life back into her daughter, and Victoria should have been grateful, but the secrecy gnawed at her. Emma had always told her everything, sometimes too much. This sudden wall between them felt like a rejection, and Victoria Chun did not handle rejection well. She tried to give Emma space, tried to respect her privacy, but the CEO in her couldn't help but want answers. It was a Tuesday morning when Victoria found herself doing something she had sworn she would never do. She was in her office, ostensibly reviewing quarterly reports, but her mind kept drifting to Emma. Finally, she picked up her phone and called her head of security, a quiet, efficient man named Robert Kwan, who had been with the company since the beginning. "Robert," she said when he answered, "I need you to do something for me, and I need you to keep it completely confidential." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Of course, Miss Chun. What do you need?" "I need you to tell me who my daughter has been spending time with. I need to know where she's been going and who she's been seeing." As she said the words, Victoria felt a wave of shame wash over her. She was spying on her own daughter. She was using company resources to invade Emma's privacy. It went against every principle she claimed to hold dear, but the fear was stronger than the shame. The fear that Emma was involved with someone dangerous or manipulative, someone who would hurt her the way the senior partner had hurt her. Robert was quiet for a long moment. "Miss Chun, are you sure about this? This is your daughter. If she finds out, she'll never forgive you." "I know," Victoria said, her voice tight, "but I need to know she's safe." Robert sighed. "I'll see what I can find. Give me a couple of days." Victoria thanked him and hung up, already regretting the decision, but unable to take it back. While Victoria was making calls that would change everything, Marcus was standing in the employee break room on the 3rd floor of Sterling Tech, pouring himself a cup of terrible coffee and trying to wake up. He had been working the night shift for 3 months now, and his body still hadn't adjusted to the inverted schedule. He was perpetually exhausted, caught in the strange twilight world of the graveyard shift where night and day blurred together into a meaningless gray. But lately, the exhaustion didn't matter. He had something to look forward to, someone. Emma had become the center of his world in a way that both thrilled and terrified him. He thought about her constantly, counted the hours until he could see her again, found himself smiling at random moments when a memory of her laugh bubbled up in his mind. It was intoxicating and dangerous, this feeling. He knew he was falling in love with her, had probably already fallen, and he knew with equal certainty that this could only end in disaster. He was a janitor dating the CEO's daughter in secret. It was the plot of a bad romantic comedy, except in real life there were no guaranteed happy end. His co-worker, an older man named Gene, who had been cleaning buildings for 30 years, noticed Marcus staring off into space. "You got that look," Gene said, shaking his head with a knowing smile. "That stupid, dreamy look that means either you're in love or you've hit your head real hard. Which is it?" Marcus tried to compose his face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't," Gene laughed. "I've been married 42 years, kid. I know that look. Just be careful, whoever she is. Love makes people do stupid things." Marcus thought about that as he pushed his cart down the empty hallway. Love did make people do stupid things, like lie to the woman who had shown him kindness when he needed it most, like sneak around behind her back knowing that the truth would hurt her, like risk the only stable job he'd had in 3 years for the chance to be with someone who made him feel alive again. He knew it was stupid. He just couldn't stop. That evening, Marcus and Emma met at their usual spot, a small park on the edge of the financial district where nobody from Sterling Tech would ever go. It was their bubble, their safe space, the one place where they could be together without fear of discovery. They sat on a bench overlooking a small pond, Emma's head resting on Marcus's shoulder, his arm wrapped around her waist. The early autumn air was cool and crisp, the leaves just beginning to turn gold and red. "We should tell her," Emma said quietly. "My mother. We should just tell her the truth." Marcus felt his stomach clench. "She'd fire me." "Maybe," Emma admitted. "Probably. But I'm tired of lying, Marcus. I'm tired of feeling like we're doing something wrong when this is the best thing that's happened to me in years." Marcus pulled back slightly so he could look at her. "What if she forbids you from seeing me? What if she uses her influence to make sure I never work anywhere in this city again?" "Your mother is a powerful woman, Emma. I've seen what powerful people do when they feel threatened." Emma's face hardened. "My mother loves me. She'll understand." "Will she?" Marcus asked gently. "Because from what you've told me, she has very clear rules about her world, and she doesn't bend them for any, not even for you." Emma was quiet, and Marcus knew he had hit a nerve. He hated doing it, hated seeing the hurt in her eyes, but he needed her to understand the stakes. "I'm not trying to be cruel," he said softly. "I'm trying to be realistic. Your mother sees me as the help. I'm invisible to her. And when invisible people suddenly become visible by dating the boss's daughter, bad things happen. So what do we do?" Emma asked, her voice small. "We can't keep hiding forever." "I know," Marcus said. "I just need more time. Time to save money. Time to line up another job. Time to be in a position where losing this one won't destroy me." He cupped her face in his hand. "I'm not ashamed of you, Emma. I'm not ashamed of us. I'm just trying to protect what we have. Can you understand that?" Emma nodded slowly, but Marcus could see the doubt in her eyes. He kissed her then, trying to communicate everything he couldn't put into words. The fear and the hope and the desperate need to make this work somehow. She kissed him back, and for a moment the world fell away, and it was just the two of them. And nothing else mattered. They didn't see the security camera mounted on the lamppost across the pond. They didn't know that Robert Kwan had been following Emma for 2 days, documenting her movements with professional thoroughness. And they certainly didn't know that at that very moment, Victoria Chun was sitting in her office, staring at a tablet displaying a crystal-clear photo of her daughter kissing a man in a gray maintenance uniform. Robert's report was short and devastating. The man was Marcus Holland, night shift janitor, hired 3 months ago, no criminal record, no red flags. Just an ordinary man with an ordinary job who had somehow captured the heart of Victoria's daughter. Victoria stared at the photo for a long time, her mind racing through 1,000 different reactions. Anger that Emma had lied to her. Fury that one of her employees had dared to pursue her daughter. Fear that Marcus was using Emma to get to her, to gain some advantage or leverage. But underneath all of that was something else, something she didn't want to acknowledge. She remembered Marcus mopping the floor in Lab 7, his quiet dignity and unexpected depth. She remembered the way he had comforted her the night Emma quit her job, the gentle wisdom in his words. He hadn't seemed like a manipulator or a gold digger. He had seemed like a good man who was trying to survive a difficult world, but that didn't change the facts. He had lied by omission. Emma had lied outright, and Victoria Chun did not tolerate deception, even from the people she loved, especially from the people she loved. She closed the tablet and made a decision. She would confront them, not separately, but together. She would make them face her and explain themselves and justify why they thought it was acceptable to build a relationship on a foundation of lies. She picked up her phone and called Robert. "I need you to find out where they're meeting next, and this time I'm going there myself." Robert hesitated. "Miss Chun, is that wise? Walking in on them could make things worse." "I don't care about worse," Victoria said, her voice cold and sharp. "I care about the truth, and I'm going to get it no matter what it costs." She hung up before he could argue. She didn't know that her decision to confront them would lead to a rainy parking lot 3 days later, or that what she would witness in that rain would force her to question everything she thought she knew about rules and love and the distance between the powerful and the invisible. All she knew was that her daughter had lied to her, and that betrayal cut deeper than any business deal gone wrong or any hostile takeover ever could. She would get answers, and then she would decide what to do with them. The next 3 days passed in a strange, tense blur. Victoria went through the motions of her normal routine, attending meetings, reviewing reports, making decisions that would affect thousands of employees and millions of dollars, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the image of Emma and Marcus on that park bench, their bodies intertwined, their faces full of an intimacy that felt like a personal affront. She tried to be rational about it, tried to examine the situation with the same cold logic she applied to business problems, but this wasn't business. This was her daughter, and rationality had no place in the tangled mess of emotions that kept her awake at night. She caught herself watching Marcus during his shifts, observing him from the darkened windows of her office as he moved through the building below. He was good at his job, she had to admit. Thorough, careful, never cutting corners. He treated the building with a respect that most of the executives didn't bother to show. There was a quiet dignity to the way he worked, a sense that he took pride in doing things right even when nobody was watching. It made her angrier somehow, this evidence of his character. It would be easier if he were careless or lazy or obviously unsuitable, but he wasn't. He was just invisible, at least to everyone except Emma. Emma, meanwhile, was walking around in a bubble of oblivious happiness. She came to visit Victoria for lunch on Wednesday, chattering about a promising job interview and a new book she was reading, her whole face alight with joy. Victoria watched her daughter across the table and felt a chasm open between them. Emma had no idea that her secret had been discovered. She had no idea that every smile and laugh was twisting the knife deeper into Victoria's heart. The lies felt like a betrayal worse than anything Victoria had experienced in business, where betrayal was expected and accounted for. This was family. This was supposed to be different. "Do you have plans this weekend?" Victoria asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Emma's expression flickered just for a moment, and Victoria saw the calculation behind her eyes. "Just some errands," Emma said. "Maybe catch up on some reading. Nothing exciting." Another lie, smooth and easy. Victoria wondered how many others there had been, how long this had been going on right under her nose. She forced a smile. "Well, if you find yourself free, maybe we could have dinner, just the two of us. It's been a while." Emma's face softened. "I'd like that, Mom. I'll let you know." She reached across the table and squeezed Victoria's hand. "Thank you for being patient with me. I know I've been distant lately. I've just been working through something." Victoria squeezed back, her heart aching. "I'm always here for you, sweetheart. You know that." The words felt hollow even as she said them. If Emma truly believed that, why had she felt the need to lie? After Emma left, Victoria called Robert. "Friday night," she said without preamble. "Tell me where they'll be." Robert's voice was carefully neutral. "They've been meeting at his apartment the last few evenings. A small place in the Riverside district. Address is in the file I sent you." Victoria felt her jaw tight. She had imagined confronting them in public, somewhere neutral, but his apartment felt invasive, intimate. It felt like walking into their private world uninvited. "Good," she said, not allowing herself to hesitate. "I'll be there at 8. "Miss Chun," Robert said carefully, "have you thought about what you're going to say, what you're trying to accomplish here?" Victoria was silent for a moment. "I'm trying to protect my daughter. That's all I've ever tried to do." "I hope that's true," Robert said quietly and hung up before Victoria could respond. His words stayed with her for the rest of the day, an uncomfortable splinter in her mind. What was she trying to accomplish? Punishment? Prevention? Protection? She wasn't entirely sure anymore. Friday arrived with an overcast sky that promised rain. Marcus finished his shift at Sterling Tech at 8 in the morning, exhausted but unable to sleep. Emma was coming over that evening, and he wanted everything to be perfect. His apartment was small and shabby, the kind of place that made it obvious he was barely scraping by, but he cleaned it until it gleamed. He bought groceries for dinner, splurging on ingredients he normally wouldn't touch. Wine, fresh pasta, vegetables from the farmer's market. He wanted to show Emma that he could take care of her even if his means were limited. He wanted her to see that a life with him, however modest, could still be good. As he cooked, he thought about Jean's warning. Love makes people do stupid things. He was definitely doing something stupid. He should have been honest with Victoria from the start. He should have told her the moment he realized Emma was her daughter. But he had been a coward, paralyzed by the fear of losing the best thing that had happened to him in years. And now he was in too deep. The lie grown so large he couldn't see a way around it. He stirred the sauce and told himself that it would be okay. They would find the right time to tell Victoria. They would make her understand. But the hope felt thin and fragile, like ice over a deep, dark lake. Emma arrived at 6, shaking droplets of rain from her hair. The storm that had been threatening all day was finally beginning to break, the sky growing darker by the minute. She kissed Marcus at the door, and he pulled her inside, wrapping his arms around her. "You're so," he murmured. "I don't care," she said, laughing. "I ran from the subway. I didn't want to be late." She looked around the apartment, taking in the candles on the small dining table, the smell of cooking food. "Marcus, this is beautiful. You didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to," he said. "I wanted tonight to be special." They ate dinner slowly, savoring the food and each other's company, talking about everything and nothing. Emma told him about the job interview, how she thought she might actually have a chance at it. Marcus told her about a passage from a book he'd been reading, a poem about second chances that had made him think of her. The rain grew heavier outside, drumming against the windows, creating a cocoon of warmth and intimacy inside the small apartment. After dinner, they sat on the worn couch, Emma curled against Marcus's side, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "I love you," he said suddenly. The words just came out, unplanned and unpolished. "I know we haven't known each other long, and I know this whole situation's complicated, but I love you, Emma." I need you to know that. Emma pulled back to look at him, her eyes shining. I love you too, she whispered. I think I've since that first day in the coffee shop. You make me feel like I can be myself, like I don't have to be perfect or strong or anything except just me. Marcus kissed her, pouring everything he felt into that moment. The kiss deepened, became urgent, and they lost themselves in each other, the world outside fading away until there was nothing but the two of them and the sound of rain. They didn't hear the car pull up outside. They didn't hear the footsteps on the stairs. They didn't know that Victoria Chun was standing outside the apartment door, her hand raised to knock, her heart pounding with a mixture of anger and dread. She had rehearsed what she would say 1,000 times, but now that she was here, all her prepared speeches seemed inadequate. She took a deep breath and knocked sharply, 3 hard raps that shattered the peace inside. Marcus and Emma sprang apart, their eyes wide. Marcus stood quickly, straightening his shirt. "Who is it?" he called, his voice tight. "Open the door, Marcus," came the reply. Victoria's voice was unmistakable, cold and commanding. "We need to talk." Emma's face went white. "Oh God," she whispered. "Marcus, she knows. How did she find out?" "I don't know," Marcus said, his mind racing. "But we can't hide anymore. We have to face this." He walked to the door and opened it. Victoria stood in the hallway, perfectly composed despite the rain that had dampened her coat. Her eyes swept over Marcus, then past him to where Emma stood frozen in the middle of the living room. The silence stretched out, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Victoria spoke. "I think the 3 of us need to have a conversation, don't you?" She walked into the apartment without waiting for an invitation, her presence filling the small space like a storm. Emma moved toward her. "M.O.M. I can explain." "Can you?" Victoria said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Can you explain why you've been lying to me for weeks? Can you explain why you've been sneaking around with my employee behind my back? Can you explain why you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth?" "I knew you'd react like this," Emma said, her voice rising. "I knew you'd make it about rules and professionalism and all the things that matter more to you than my happiness." "That's not fair," Victoria shot back. "Everything I do is for your happiness. Everything." Emma laughed, a bitter sound. "Everything you do is for control, Mom. You control your company, you control your image, and you try to control me, but you can't. Not anymore." Marcus stepped between them, his hands raised. "Please, both of you, this isn't helping." Victoria's eyes snapped to him, and he saw the full force of her fury for the first time. "You don't get to speak," she said. "You lied to me. I showed you kindness. I confided in you, and you repaid me by pursuing my daughter in secret." Marcus felt the words hit him like physical blows. "You're right," he said quietly. "I should have told you. I was wrong, but I love your daughter, Miss Chun. And that's not a lie." The rain hammered against the windows, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. Victoria looked from Marcus to Emma and back again, and something in her expression shifted. The anger was still there, but underneath it was something else. Fear. "She's all I have," Victoria said, and her voice cracked. "She's all I have, and you're taking her from me." "Nobody's taking anyone," Emma said, moving to her mother's side. "Mom, I'm right here. I've always been right here." Victoria shook her head. "No. You've been with him. You've been building a life that doesn't include me. And when you realize you don't need me anymore, you'll leave, just like your father did." The vulnerability in Victoria's voice shocked them both. Emma reached for her mother's hand. "I will never not need you, Mom. You're my mother. But I also need this. I need him. Please try to understand." Victoria pulled her hand away. "I can't do this right now," she said. "I need to think." She turned toward the door, but Marcus's voice stopped her. "Miss Chun," he said, "if you want me to resign, I will. If that's what it takes for you to believe that this isn't about manipulation or advantage, I'll walk away from Sterling Tech tomorrow. Just please don't punish Emma for my mistakes." Victoria looked at him for a long moment, and he couldn't read her expression. Then she walked out, leaving the door open behind her, the sound of her footsteps echoing down the stairs. Emma ran after her. "Mom, wait, please." Marcus followed, his heart in his throat. They burst out into the rain just as Victoria reached the parking lot. The storm had intensified, the rain coming down in sheets, soaking them all within seconds. Emma caught up to her mother, grabbing her arm. "Mom, please, just listen to me." Victoria turned, the rain streaming down her face, mixing with tears. "What do you want me to say, Emma? That I approve, that I'm happy for you? I can't watch you throw your life away on someone who—" "What?" Emma interrupted. "Someone who isn't rich, someone who isn't powerful, someone who actually sees me as a person instead of an asset. Marcus isn't like the men in your world, Mom. He's kind, he's honest. He makes me feel valued. Why can't that be enough? Because people like us don't end up with people like him," Victoria said, and the words hung in the rain-soaked air like an indictment. "The world doesn't work that way." Marcus stepped forward, rain plastering his hair to his forehead. "Then maybe your world is broken," he said quietly. They stood there in the rain, the 3 of them, a frozen tableau of pain and love and impossible choices. And that was the moment, that precise second when everything hung in the balance, that Marcus reached for Emma's hand. She took it, her fingers intertwining with his, and they turned to face Victoria together. United. Victoria saw it, saw the choice her daughter had made, and something inside her cracked. Emma pulled Marcus close and kissed him, defiant and desperate, claiming him in front of her mother with a courage that was both heartbreaking and beautiful. And Victoria stood there, her hand pressed to her mouth, watching her daughter kiss the janitor in the rain, and she realized with stunning clarity that the first words out of her mouth would determine everything that came after. The anger, the fear, the hurt, all of it crystallized into a single moment of truth. What would she choose? Control or love, rules or family, the person she had always been or the person she needed to become? The rain poured down and Victoria Chun opened her mouth to speak. The rain continued its relentless assault as Victoria Chun stood frozen in the parking lot, her hand still pressed to her mouth, watching her daughter and Marcus break apart from their kiss. Water streamed down her face, mixing with tears she hadn't realized she was crying. Emma and Marcus stood together, hands intertwined, waiting for the verdict. The silence stretched out for what felt like an eternity, broken only by the drumming of rain on pavement and the distant rumble of thunder. Victoria's lips parted, and the first words that came out were barely audible over the storm. "Does he know about your nightmares?" The question landed like a stone in still water, rippling outward with unexpected weight. Emma blinked, confusion replacing the defiance in her eyes. "What? Mom, what are you talking about?" Victoria took a step closer, her voice stronger now, cutting through the rain. "After that man put his hands on you, you started having nightmares. You didn't tell me, but I'm your mother. I know when you can't sleep. I know when you're afraid, so I'm asking you, does he know?" Emma's grip on Marcus's hand tightened. "Yes," she said quietly. "He knows." "And?" Victoria asked, her gaze shifting to Marcus. "What do you do when she wakes up terrified in the middle of the night?" Marcus met her eyes without flinching. "I hold her, tell her she's safe. I remind her that what happened wasn't her fault and that she's stronger than she thinks she is. And I stay awake until she falls back asleep because she shouldn't have to be alone with that fear." Victoria felt something crack inside her chest. She had imagined Marcus as so many things over the past 3 days. A manipulator, a gold digger, a threat. But she had never imagined him as the person who held her daughter through her nightmares, who knew the deepest wounds Victoria herself had been unable to heal. She took another step forward, closing the distance between them. "When I found out about you too," she said, her voice shaking, "I thought I knew exactly what was happening. I thought you were using her to get to me. I thought Emma was being naive. I thought I needed to protect her from making a terrible mistake." "Mom," Emma started, but Victoria held up her hand. "Let me finish, please." Emma fell silent, and Victoria continued. "I've spent 20 years building walls, around my company, around my reputation, around my heart. I thought that was strength. I thought that was how you survived in this world. You make rules. You follow them. You never let anyone get close enough to hurt you." She looked at Emma, her expression raw and vulnerable. "And then I had you. And suddenly I had someone I loved more than any rule, more than any wall. But instead of tearing down my walls, I just built new ones around you. I thought I was protecting you, but all I was doing was suffocating you." The rain had soaked through all of their clothes, but none of them moved. Victoria's voice broke. "I have been so afraid of losing you that I've been pushing you away. And tonight, when I saw you kiss him, my first instinct was to destroy what you had, to fire him, to forbid you from seeing him, to use every ounce of power I have to separate you." She wiped the rain and tears from her face. "But then I realized something. If I do that, I don't lose just you. I lose the person I want to be. The person your father left because I couldn't be." Emma's eyes widened. "Dad didn't leave because of you. He left because he was a coward who couldn't handle real life." Victoria shook her head sadly. "He left because I chose my rules over our marriage. He wanted me to be human, to make mistakes, to let him in, and I couldn't. I was so busy being the perfect CEO that I forgot how to be a wife. I won't make that mistake with you, Emma. I won't lose you the same way." She turned to Marcus and her expression shifted into something between respect and challenge. "I don't know you, Marcus Holland. I don't know if you're good enough for my daughter. Frankly, I don't think anyone could be. But she loves you, and more importantly, you see her, really see her, not as Victoria Chun's daughter, or as a prize to be won, but as Emma, just Emma." She took a shaky breath. "So my first words to you aren't going to be that you're fired. First words are going to be this. If you hurt her, if you betray her trust, if you ever make her feel small or afraid or less than she is, there is no place on this earth you'll be able to hide from me. Do you understand?" Marcus nodded, his throat tight. "I understand, Miss Chun. And I promise you, I would rather cut off my own hand than hurt her." "Good," Victoria said. "Then we understand each other." She looked between them, these two people standing in the rain, looking bedraggled and scared and utterly devoted to each other. "Now can we please get out of this storm before we all catch pneumonia? This is ridiculous." Emma let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and launched herself at her mother. Victoria caught her, wrapping her arms around her daughter and holding her tight. "I'm sorry," Emma whispered. "I'm sorry I lied to you. I was just so scared you wouldn't understand." "I'm sorry too," Victoria said, stroking Emma's wet hair. "I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to hide. Sorry I've been so rigid and cold. I'm going to try to be better. I promise." They stood there in the rain, mother and daughter, holding each other while Marcus watched with tears streaming down his face. Finally, Victoria pulled back and looked at him. "Well, don't just stand there. Get over here." Marcus moved forward hesitantly, and Victoria pulled him into the embrace, the three of them standing together in the downpour. "You're a good man, Marcus Holland," Victoria said quietly. "I saw it that night in the lab when you comforted me. I should have trusted my instincts instead of my fear." They eventually made their way back inside Marcus's apartment, dripping water all over the floor. shivering and laughing with the kind of giddy relief that comes after a storm has passed. Victoria looked around the small space with new eyes, seeing it not as evidence of Marcus's low status, but as evidence of his character. It was clean, organized, filled with books and small, thoughtful touches. "This is where you've been spending your evenings," she said to Emma. "It's nice. Feels like a home." Emma smiled. "It does, doesn't it?" Victoria sat down on the worn couch, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to just be present without thinking about what came next. Marcus brought them towels and made tea, and they sat together in the small living room, the tension gradually dissolving into something softer. Victoria asked Marcus about his life before Sterling Tech, and he told her about his career as a professor, about the betrayal that had broken him, about the long climb back to believing in himself again. "You remind me of someone I used to know," Victoria said when he finished. "A younger version of myself, maybe. Someone who believed the world was fundamentally good and worth fighting for. I lost that person somewhere along the way." Marcus looked at her thoughtfully. "Maybe you didn't lose her. Maybe she's just been waiting for the right moment to come back." Victoria smiled, a real genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Maybe." As the night wore on, they talked about the future. Victoria made it clear that while she accepted their relationship, there were practical matters to address. "Marcus, you're talented and educated. Working night shift as a janitor was a survival strategy, but it doesn't have to be permanent. What do you want to do with your life?" Marcus glanced at Emma, then back at Victoria. "Honestly, I want to teach again. I want to help students discover literature the way I did. I want to believe that the academic world isn't entirely corrupt, that there are still places where integrity matters." "Then do it," Victoria said. "Apply to universities. Use me as a reference if you need one. I may not have academic credentials, but I know how to write a letter that gets attention. And Marcus, you don't have to quit Sterling Tech until you have something lined up. I meant what I said. You're good at your job, but you're capable of so much more." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. "Thank you, Miss Chun. That means more than you know." "Call me Victoria," she said. "If you're going to be part of my daughter's life, we might as well drop the formalities." She stood up, preparing to leave. "It's late, and we're all exhausted. But before I go, I need to say one more thing." She looked at both of them, her expression serious. "What you two have is rare. I spent my whole marriage looking for what I see between you, and I never found it. Don't take it for granted. Fight for it. Nurture it. And Emma," she turned to her daughter, "don't ever hide something this important from me again. I may not always react the way you want me to, but I will always love you. Always." Emma hugged her mother again. "I love you too, Mom." Victoria left them there, walking out into the night. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and fresh. She sat in her car for a long time before starting the engine, processing everything that had happened. She had come here tonight prepared to end Marcus Holland's employment and Emma's relationship in one decisive move. Instead, she had torn down walls she hadn't even known she was hiding behind. She had chosen love over rules, humanity over control. It terrified her, but for the first time in years, she also felt free. As she drove home through the empty streets, Victoria thought about what Marcus had said. Maybe the person she used to be wasn't lost. Maybe she'd just been buried under years of armor and fear. Maybe it wasn't too late to become someone new, someone better, someone worthy of the second chance her daughter and Marcus had given her. The city lights blurred past her windows and Victoria Chun smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions about how to navigate this unexpected situation. But tonight she had done something she never thought possible. She had let go, and the world hadn't ended. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. The week following the rainstorm confrontation was strange and delicate, like learning to walk on a bridge made of glass. Victoria kept her word and said nothing publicly about Marcus and Emma's relationship, but the tension at Sterling Tech was palpable. People noticed things. They noticed that the CEO no longer walked past the night janitor as if he were invisible. They noticed Emma Chun visiting the building more frequently, appearing in the lobby at odd hours. They noticed the way Victoria's assistant had quietly removed Marcus's name from the list of employees under review for potential layoffs. Jean was the first to confront Marcus about it. They were in the supply closet on Thursday night, restocking cleaning materials. The older man turned to him with a knowing look. "So you want to tell me why the CEO stopped by the break room yesterday and personally thanked you for keeping the building clean?" Jean asked, his eyebrows raised. "Because in 30 years of doing this job, I've never seen a CEO thank a janitor for anything." Marcus felt his face flush. "It's complicated, Jean." "Complicated how?" Jean pressed. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've somehow managed to get on Victoria Chun's good side, and that's not something that just happens by accident." Marcus hesitated, then decided that Jean deserved the truth. He had been a good friend, and secrets had already caused enough damage. "I'm dating her daughter," he said quietly. "We've been together for 2 months. She found out last week." Jean's eyes went wide. "You're dating Emma Chun?" "The Emma Chun?" Marcus nodded. Jean let out a low whistle. "And you still have your job and all your limbs, and you're not hiding in witness protection somewhere." "Marcus, what kind of magic spell did you cast on that woman?" "No magic," Marcus said, allowing himself a small smile. "Just honesty. Eventually, after a lot of lying first, but we talked, really talked, and she understood." Jean shook his head in disbelief. "I'll be damned. You're either the luckiest man alive or the bravest. Maybe both." He clapped Marcus on the shoulder. "Good for you, kid. That daughter of hers deserves someone who sees her as more than a meal ticket. Just be careful. Not everyone here is going to be as understanding as the boss." Jean was right. By Friday afternoon, rumors were spreading through Sterling Tech like wildfire. The whispers started in the break rooms and coffee stations, spreading from department to department apartment with increasing embellishment. The janitor was sleeping with the CEO's daughter. The janitor was blackmailing the CEO. The janitor was actually a secret millionaire conducting some kind of social experiment. The stories grew more absurd with each retelling, but underneath the gossip was a common thread of disbelief, and in some quarters, resentment. Marcus felt the shift in how people treated. Some employees, the younger ones mostly, smiled at him with genuine warmth, as if his relationship with Emma was some kind of fairy tale they were rooting. But others, particularly those in upper management, looked at him with thinly veiled contempt. He was disrupting the natural order of things, crossing lines that weren't supposed to be crossed. He was a reminder that the hierarchy they had spent years climbing wasn't as fixed as they wanted to believe. It was during his Friday night shift that Marcus encountered the real problem. He was cleaning the executive conference room on the 45th floor when Richard Brennan walked in. Brennan was the chief operating officer, a man in his late 50s with silver hair, expensive suits, and the kind of old money arrogance that made him believe the world existed to serve his interests. He was also, Marcus had learned from office gossip, deeply opposed to Victoria's more progressive policies and had been angling for her job for years. Well, well, Brennan said, his voice dripping with false friendliness. Marcus Holland, the man of the hour. Marcus straightened up from wiping down the table. Brennan, can I help you with something? Brennan walked slowly around the conference table, his fingers trailing along the polished wood. I've been hearing fascinating things about you, Marcus. Fascinating and frankly disturbing. He stopped and fixed Marcus with a cold stare. Tell me, how does a janitor seduce the CEO's daughter? Is there some kind of manual I'm not aware of? Some secret technique they teach in maintenance school? Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. With respect, sir, my personal life is none of your business. Oh, but it is my business, Brennan said, his voice hardening. When an employee engages in behavior that could be seen as exploitative or manipulative, when he uses his proximity to power to advance his own interests, that becomes everyone's business. Marcus set down his cleaning supplies carefully. I'm not using anyone, Mr. Brennan. I'm in a relationship with someone I care about deeply. The fact that her mother is my employer is complicated, yes, but it's not exploitation. Brennan laughed, a harsh sound. You expect me to believe that Victoria Chun, one of the most powerful women in this city, is perfectly fine with her daughter dating the help? Marcus met his gaze steadily. Why don't you ask her yourself? Brennan's expression darkened. I intend to. At the next board meeting, I'm going to raise concerns about this situation, about the appearance of impropriety, about the message it sends to other employees, about the lack of professional boundaries. He leaned forward. You may have fooled Victoria and her naive daughter, but you don't fool me. I know opportunism when I see it. Before Marcus could respond, a voice cut through the tension like a knife. Then you must see it every time you look in the mirror, Richard. Both men turned. Victoria stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her expression glacial. Marcus felt his stomach drop. How long had she been standing there? Long enough, Victoria said, as if reading his thoughts. She walked into the room with the measured pace of a predator. Long enough to hear you insult my daughter, my judgment, and my employee. Would you like to continue, Richard? Or have you said enough for one evening? Brennan's face reddened. Victoria, I was simply expressing concern about a situation that could expose the company to liability. Liability, Victoria repeated, her voice sharp. What liability exactly? Marcus has done nothing wrong. He hasn't harassed anyone. He hasn't violated any company policy. He's done his job excellently while navigating an unusual personal situation with more grace than most people in this building would be capable of. She took another step forward. The only liability I see right now is a coup who thinks he can bully my employees and question my decisions. Brennan straightened his shoulders, trying to recover his authority. The board will want to discuss this. I'm sure they will, Victoria said coolly. And when they do, I'll remind them that Sterling Tech has a zero-tolerance policy, workplace harassment and discrimination. I'll remind them that creating a hostile work environment for an employee based on who they choose to date in their personal time is illegal. And I'll remind them that as CEO, I have the authority to terminate anyone who violates those policies, including you, Richard. Are we clear? The silence that followed was deafening. Brennan's jaw worked as if he wanted to say something more, but Victoria's expression made it clear that any further words would be a career-ending mistake. Finally, he nodded curtly and left the room, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Victoria waited until he was gone, then turned to Marcus. Are you okay? Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. I am now. Thank you for that. You don't have to defend me, though. I can handle people like Brennan. I know you can, Victoria said. But you shouldn't have to. Not for dating my daughter. She looked troubled. I knew there would be fallout from this, but I underestimated how ugly it might get. Richard has always been threatened by Chain. This just gives him another weapon to use against me. Marcus studied her carefully. Do you regret it? Accepting us, I mean. If it's causing problems for you at work, maybe it would be easier if I did resign. Victoria's expression softened. Marcus, in the last week, I've watched my daughter smile more than she has in a year. I've seen her come alive in ways I thought I'd never see again. I've also gotten to know you better, and I've realized that you're exactly the kind of person I want in my daughter's life. Someone with integrity. Someone who treats people with respect regardless of their position. Someone who chose the hard right over the easy wrong. She shook her head. No, I don't regret it. And you're not resigning unless you want to. Marcus felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Thank you, Victoria, for everything. She smiled. a genuine expression that transformed her face. "You've given me my daughter back, Marcus, or that's worth fighting for. Besides," she added, her tone lightening slightly, "Richard Brennan has been a thorn in my side for years. I've been looking for an excuse to put him in his place." He handed it to me on a silver platter. They stood there for a moment, an unlikely alliance forged in the sterile conference room. Then Victoria glanced at her watch. "It's late. Why don't you finish up here and go home? I'm sure Emma is waiting to hear how your night went." Marcus nodded, picking up his supplies. "Victoria, before you go, there's something I want you to know. I've started applying to teaching positions. Universities, community colleges, anywhere that might give me a chance. I took your advice. I'm not giving up on who I was meant to be." Victoria's expression filled with approval. "Good. That's very good, Marcus. And when you get interviews, let me know. I'll make sure they understand what kind of man they're considering." Marcus watched her leave, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Gratitude, certainly. Relief that she had intervened with Brennan, but also a growing sense of responsibility. Victoria was putting herself on the line for him, defending him to her board and her executives. He couldn't let her down. He couldn't let Emma down. He finished cleaning the conference room with renewed purpose, already mentally drafting the cover letters he would send out over the weekend. As he pushed his cart toward the elevator, his phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Mom just called. She told me what happened with Brennan. Are you okay? Come over when your shift ends. I'll be waiting." Marcus smiled and typed back a quick reply. He was okay. More than okay. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to do. The road ahead would be difficult, he knew that. There would be more Richard Brennans, more challenges, more moments when he would have to prove that he deserved the faith Victoria and Emma had placed in him. But he was ready. He had found something worth fighting for, and he wasn't going to let it slip away. 3 weeks passed in a blur of cautious optimism. Marcus continued his night shifts at Sterling Tech while sending out applications to universities across the state. He had 15 rejection letters so far, each one politely explaining that while his credentials were impressive, they had decided to go with other candidates. He tried not to let the rejections discourage him, but each one felt like confirmation of what he had feared. His reputation in academia had been too thoroughly destroyed. The whispers and rumors from 3 years ago had followed him like a shadow, and no letter of recommendation from Victoria Chun, however glowing, could erase them. Emma sensed his frustration even when he tried to hide it. They were having dinner at her apartment on a Tuesday evening when she finally confronted him about it. "You've been quiet all night," she said, setting down her fork. "Talk to me. What's going on in that head of yours?" Marcus looked up from his barely touched plate. "I got another rejection today. That makes 16. He tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. "Maybe I'm fooling myself. Maybe teaching is in my past and I need to accept that." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "You've only been applying for a month, Marcus. These things take time." "I know," he said, but there was a weariness in his voice that broke her heart. "It's just hard to keep believing when every door keeps closing." Emma squeezed his hand. "Then we find another door, or we build one ourselves. You're one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. The academic world's loss is real, but it doesn't define you. Maybe there are other ways to teach that don't involve universities." "Like what?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. Emma's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "What about tutoring? Private instruction for students who need help with literature or writing. You could start small, build a reputation, work with kids who actually want to learn instead of just checking boxes for a degree." Marcus considered it. The idea had merit, but it also felt like settling, like giving up on the dream of standing in front of a classroom again. But maybe settling wasn't the right word. Maybe it was adapting. Before he could respond, Emma's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted to concern. "It's my mom. She's calling late," Emma answered, putting the phone on speaker. "Mom, is everything okay?" Victoria's voice came through, tight with controlled anger. "Emma, I need you to see something. Check your email. I just sent you a link. Both of you should see this." Emma opened her laptop and pulled up the email. It contained a link to a private blog post published just hours earlier. The title made her stomach drop. "Nepotism and Poor Judgment. How Victoria Chun's Personal Life is Destroying Sterling Tech." The post was anonymous, but the writing was professional and detailed. It painted a picture of Victoria as a CEO who had lost her objectivity, who was allowing her daughter's relationship with a lowly janitor to compromise her judgment and damage the company's reputation. It included carefully selected facts, twisted just enough to seem damning. Marcus's termination from his previous academic position was framed as a scandal involving ethical violations. Emma's departure from her previous job was portrayed as her being fired for competence rather than her choice to leave after harassment. The most damaging section focused on the encounter between Marcus and Richard Brennan, claiming that Victoria had threatened to fire her coup for simply expressing legitimate concerns about workplace appropriateness. The post concluded with a call for the board to seriously consider whether Victoria Chun was still fit to lead Sterling Tech, given her apparent inability to separate her personal feelings from professional responsibilities. Marcus felt sick as he read it. "This is Brennan, isn't it? He's retaliating." "Almost certainly," Victoria's voice said through the phone, but he was smart enough to do it anonymously. "The post was sent to every board member, every major shareholder, and several business journalists I know. By tomorrow morning, this will be circulating everywhere." Emma's hands clenched into fists. "This is slander. We can sue. We can prove it's all lies and distortions. We could, Victoria said, but that would only draw more attention to it. Lawsuits like that take years and cost millions. And even if we win, the damage to all of our reputations would be done. She paused. The board has called an emergency meeting for Thursday. They want to discuss concerns about my leadership. Mom, Emma said, her voice shaking with anger, you can't let them do this. You built this company. You've given them everything. Victoria's laugh was bitter. I've learned something recently, sweetheart. Power is only real as long as other people believe in it. Right now, my board is questioning whether to believe in me, and honestly, I don't blame them. I have been distracted. I've been making decisions based on personal feelings. That's exactly what I've spent 20 years telling myself I would never do. But those decisions have been right, Marcus interjected. You defended me because Brennan was harassing an employee. You accepted Emma's relationship because it makes her happy. Those aren't failures of judgment. Those are you finally remembering to be human. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was softer. Thank you for that, Marcus. But being human is expensive when you're trying to run a billion-dollar company. She took a breath. I need to prepare for this meeting. I need to figure out how to defend choices I'm not even sure were defensible. I just wanted you both to know what was coming. After Victoria hung up, Emma and Marcus sat in stunned silence. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice filled with determination. This is my fault. If I hadn't pushed for us to be together, if I had just kept my distance until you weren't working there anymore, none of this would be happening. Marcus pulled her close. Don't do that. Don't make our relationship the villain in this story. Brennan is the villain. The system that protects men like him is the villain. We didn't do anything wrong, Emma, but my mom is paying the price, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. Everything she's built is being threatened because she chose to support me. How is that fair? It's not, Marcus admitted, but life rarely is. The question isn't whether this is fair. The question is what we do about it. Emma pulled back to look at him. What can we do? We're just two people against an entire corporate machine. Marcus thought for a long moment. Then I go to the board meeting. I testify on Victoria's behalf. I tell them exactly who I am and why our relationship isn't some scandal or manipulation. I put a human face on the story Brennan is trying to tell. Emma shook her head. Marcus, that could destroy any chance you have of getting back into teaching. If you go public like this, every search committee will Google your name and find this mess. You'll be the janitor who dated the CEO's daughter. That label will follow you forever. I know, Marcus said quietly, but your mother put her reputation on the line for me, for us. I can't hide while she fights this battle alone. Emma searched his face, seeing the resolve there. You're sure about this? He nodded. I spent 3 years being invisible, Emma. Hiding from confrontation, running from fights. I'm done with that. If standing up and telling the truth costs me something, then that's a price I'm willing to pay. Emma kissed him then, fierce and desperate. I love you. You know that? I love you so much it terrifies. I love you too, Marcus whispered against her lips. That's why I have to do this. They spent the rest of the night planning what Marcus would say, crafting a statement that was honest and powerful without being defensive. Marcus would lay out the timeline of their relationship, explain the circumstances that had brought them together, and address each accusation in Brennan's anonymous post directly. It wouldn't be enough to convince everyone, but it might be enough to give Victoria the support she needed. By the time dawn broke over the city, they had a plan. It was risky and potentially career-ending for Marcus, but it was also the right thing to do. As Marcus prepared to leave for his apartment to get a few hours of sleep before work, Emma grabbed his hand one more time. Promise me something, she said. No matter what happens at that board meeting, no matter how bad things get, promise me we'll get through it together. Marcus cupped her face in his hands. I promise. We've already survived the storm, Emma. Everything else is just rain. He kissed her forehead and left, walking out into the early morning light. The city was just beginning to wake up, and somewhere in a penthouse office, Victoria Chun was preparing for the fight of her professional life. Marcus didn't know if his testimony would be enough to save her. He didn't know if standing up would cost him everything he had been trying to rebuild, but he knew that Emma was right. They would face it together, whatever came. And somehow that made even the impossible seem manageable. Thursday morning arrived too quickly. Marcus put on the one suit he owned, the same one he'd worn to job interviews years ago. It was slightly worn, but still presentable. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. He wasn't the defeated professor who had run away from confrontation. He wasn't the invisible janitor who kept his head down and avoided making waves. He was someone new, someone forged in the crucible of loss and rebuilt through love. He was someone worth fighting for. And more importantly, someone worth fighting alongside. Emma met him outside Sterling Tech headquarters, dressed in a professional Navy dress, her hand clutching his tightly. Victoria was already inside, preparing for battle. Together, they walked through the glass doors into the building where Marcus had spent months mopping floors and emptying trash cans, and headed toward the executive conference room where his testimony would either save Victoria's career or destroy them all. The executive conference room on the 45th floor was intimidating by design. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city below, making everyone inside feel like masters of the universe looking down on ordinary mortals. The massive table was solid mahogany, polished to a mirror shine, surrounded by leather chairs that cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. 12 board members sat around that table, their faces carefully neutral. their eyes weighing and measuring everything they saw. Victoria sat at the head of the table, composed and professional, but Marcus could see the tension in the set of her shoulders. Richard Brennan sat to her right, his expression smug and satisfied like a cat that had just cornered a mouse. Marcus and Emma were allowed into the room as observers, seated in chairs along the wall. The symbolism wasn't lost on Marcus. They were present but powerless, witnesses to a judgment that would determine all of their futures. The chairman of the board, an elderly man named Harold Westbrook, who had been with Sterling Tech since its inception, called the meeting to order. His voice was grave and formal, the voice of someone about to deliver an unpleasant verdict. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to discuss serious concerns that have been raised about the leadership and judgment of our CEO, Victoria Chun. These concerns, while presented anonymously, contain allegations that cannot be ignored. He gestured to a stack of printed copies of Brennan's blog post, distributed to each board member. The document questions whether personal relationships and family considerations have compromised Victoria's ability to lead effectively. It raises questions about preferential treatment of employees, about threats made to senior management, and about whether Sterling Tech's reputation is being damaged by decisions that prioritize personal loyalty over corporate responsibility. Westbrook looked at Victoria. Victoria, you've led this company brilliantly for over a decade, but we need to understand what's happened. We need to hear your side of the story. Victoria stood and the room fell silent. She had prepared a statement, Marcus knew, a carefully crafted defense that addressed each accusation with facts and logic. But as she stood there looking at the faces of people she had worked with for years, people she had made wealthy beyond their wildest dreams, she made a different choice. She decided to tell them the truth, not the polished corporate truth, but the raw, human truth. She began to speak, and her voice was steady but filled with emotion she had spent years learning to suppress. You're right to question me, she said. You're right to wonder if I've changed, because I have. 3 months ago, I was the CEO who never let personal feelings interfere with business decisions. I was the woman who had rules for everything and followed them without exception. I thought that was strength. I thought that was leadership. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the table, and then I watched my daughter walk out of a job because a senior partner sexually harassed her and the company did nothing. I watched her break, and I realized that all my rules and all my power meant nothing if I couldn't protect the people I loved. I realized I'd built a life that was successful and empty, and I was teaching my daughter to do the same. Some of the board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Victoria continued, her voice gaining strength. So yes, when I learned that my daughter was in a relationship with one of our employees, I didn't immediately fire him. I didn't immediately forbid the relationship. Instead, I did something I haven't done in 20 years. I listened, tried to understand. I chose to see the human beings involved instead of just the potential liability. She looked directly at Brennan. And when Maiku decided to harass that employee, to insult my daughter and question my judgment in front of Marcus Holland, I defended them. Because that's what leaders are supposed to do. Protect their people, not just their profit margin. Brennan couldn't stay silent any longer. He stood, his face flushed. This is exactly the problem. You're admitting that you made decisions based on emotion rather than sound business judgment. You're confirming everything that anonymous post said about you. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Tell me, Richard, how did that anonymous post know the exact words you said to Marcus Holland? How did it know the precise details of a conversation that happened late at night when no one else was around? Unless, of course, you wrote it yourself. The room erupted in murmurs. Brennan's face went pale, then red. That's a baseless accusation. Is it? Victoria asked, pulling out her phone. Because my head of security did some digging. The blog post was published from an IP address that traces back to your home office. The metadata on the document shows it was created on your personal computer. Did you really think we wouldn't investigate? Brennan opened his mouth, then closed it. Trapped. The other board members were staring at him now, their expressions ranging from shock to disgust. Westbrook's voice cut through the chaos. Richard, is this true? Did you author that post? Brennan's jaw worked as he calculated his options. Finally, he straightened his shoulders, choosing defiance. Yes, I wrote it, and everything in it is true. Victoria has lost her objectivity. She's putting her personal life ahead of this company's interests. Someone needed to say it. Then say it to my face, a new voice interjected. Marcus stood up from his chair along the wall, his heart pounding but his voice steady. Say it to me, Mr. Brennan. Tell me how I manipulated Victoria Chun or her daughter. Tell me what I've done that's so threatening to this company. You don't have the right to speak here, Brennan snapped. This is a board meeting. You're not even supposed to be in this room. Actually, Westbrook said thoughtfully, I'd like to hear what Mr. Holland has to say. If we're going to make decisions about Victoria's judgment regarding him, we should probably hear from the man himself. He gestured to the center of the room. Mr. Holland, please, share your perspective. Marcus walked to stand beside Victoria, and Emma rose from her chair to stand on his other side. The three of them united in the face of Judge. Marcus took a deep breath and began to speak. My name is Marcus Holland. 3 years ago, I was a professor of literature at Riverside University. I had tenure, respect, career I loved. Then a colleague committed academic fraud, and I was asked to testify against him. When I told the truth, he destroyed my reputation. He spread rumors that I was the one who had plagiarized, that I was bitter and vindictive, that I couldn't be trusted. By the time the university cleared me, my career was over. No one one wanted to hire the professor at the center of a scandal, even if he was the innocent party. He looked around the table, meeting each board member's eyes, so I disappeared. I took a job as a janitor because it was honest work where no one knew my name or my history. I could be invisible. I could be safe. And then I met Emma Chun in a coffee shop. I didn't know who she was. I just knew she was in pain, the same kind of pain I had been in. We talked. We connected. We fell in love. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't strategic. It was just two broken people finding each other and deciding to be less broken together. Marcus turned to face Brennan directly. You want to know what I've gained from this relationship, Mr. Brennan? I've gained sleepless nights worrying that I'm not good enough for Emma. I've gained the stress of knowing that every mistake I make reflects on her and her mother. I've gained the hostility of people like you who see me as some kind of threat to the natural order. His voice strengthened. But I've also gained something more valuable than anything you could understand. I've gained the love of an extraordinary woman. I've gained the respect of another extraordinary woman who chose to see me as a person rather than a position. And I've gained the courage to stop hiding and start fighting for the life I want to live. The room was absolutely silent. Marcus continued, his words flowing from a place of deep conviction. You're all sitting here wondering if Victoria Chun is fit to lead this company. You're wondering if she's let her personal feelings cloud her judgment. But I'm standing here wondering if any of you understand what real leadership looks like. Victoria Chun didn't defend me because I'm dating her daughter. She defended me because Richard Brennan was abusing his power to harass an employee. She didn't accept our relationship because it was convenient. She accepted it because she chose love and humanity over rigid rules that serve no one. Emma stepped forward then, her voice clear and strong. And I'll tell you something else. My mother built this company on principles of integrity and respect. She's made you all wealthy beyond measure. She's navigated crises and challenges that would have destroyed lesser leaders. And the moment she shows that she's human, the moment she chooses compassion over cold calculation, you question her fitness to lead. What does that say about all of you? Westbrook raised his hand for silence. The room settled. He looked at Victoria for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at Brennan. Richard, your behavior has been inappropriate and unprofessional. You created an anonymous attack document and distributed it to board members and the press. That's not whistleblowing, that's sabotage. You're suspended pending a full investigation into your conduct. Brennan's mouth fell open. You can't be serious. I'm protecting this company. You're protecting your own ambitions, Westbrook said coldly. Security will escort you from the building. As two security guards appeared to lead Brennan out, Westbrook turned back to Victoria. As for you, Victoria, I've known you for 15 years. I've watched you build something remarkable. And if the price of that remarkable success is that you occasionally remember you're a human being with a daughter you love, then I can live with that. The other board members began to nod one by one. A woman named Patricia Reeves, the head of the finance committee, spoke up. Victoria, we're not questioning your leadership. We're grateful for it. What we saw today was a leader who stands by her principles and protects her people. That's exactly the kind of CEO Sterling Tech needs. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. Thank you, all of you. I promise you won't regret placing your trust in me. The meeting adjourned, and as the board members filed out, several of them stopped to shake Marcus's hand or offer words of encouragement to Emma. Victoria stood at the window, looking out over the city, and Marcus and Emma joined her. You did it, Emma whispered. You won. Victoria shook her head. We won, the three of us. She turned to face them, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, she smiled with genuine joy. We won because we told the truth and stood together. That's more powerful than any boardroom maneuvering. As they walked out of the conference room together, Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulder. The fight wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more obstacles, but they had proven something important today. They had proven that love and integrity could stand up to power and fear. They had proven that choosing humanity over rules wasn't weakness. It was the truest form of strength. The weeks following the board meeting brought an unexpected peace. Richard Brennan resigned quietly, taking a generous severance package in exchange for his silence and a non-compete agreement that would keep him away from Sterling Tech's competitors. The anonymous blog post was scrubbed from the internet, replaced by a press release announcing Brennan's departure and Victoria's unanimous vote of confidence from the board. The business press tried to make something scandalous out of it, but without Brennan to fuel the fire, the story died quickly. People moved on to the next corporate drama, and Sterling Tech returned to its normal rhythm of innovation and growth. Marcus continued working his night shifts, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Word had spread through the building about what happened at the board meet, and the story had grown with each retelling. In some versions, Marcus had given a speech so moving that board members wept openly. In others, he had confronted Brennan directly, forcing a confession through sheer moral authority. The truth was more mundane, but Marcus didn't mind the embellishment. What mattered was that people no longer looked through him as if he were invisible. They saw him now. They greeted him by name, asked about his day, treated him with the respect due to any human being doing honest work. Gene pulled him aside one night, his weathered face split with a wide grin. You know what you did, kid? You changed things around here. I've been cleaning these floors for 30 years, and I've never seen the executives treat people like us with anything but contempt. But ever since that board meeting, it's different. People smile. They say thank you. Hell, yesterday someone held the elevator for me instead of letting the doors close in my face. That's because of you. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I just told the truth, Gene. That's all. Sometimes that's all it takes, Gene said, clapping him on the shoulder. Sometimes one person standing up and being honest is enough to remind everyone else how to be human. On a Friday evening, exactly 6 weeks after the board meeting, Marcus received an email that made his hand shake. It was from Dr. Helen Rosewood, the chair of the English department at Westfield College, a small liberal arts school about 2 hours outside the city. The email was brief and professional, but the words jumped off the screen. Dear Mr. Holland, we were impressed by your application and would like to invite you for an interview. We have an opening for a visiting professor position, and your background in contemporary literature particularly interests us. We've also received a remarkable letter of recommendation from Victoria Chun. Would you be available to meet with our hiring committee next Tuesday? Marcus read the email 3 times to make sure it was real. Then he called Emma, his voice trembling with excitement. I got an interview. A real interview at a real college. Emma's shriek of joy was so loud he had to pull the phone away from his ear. Marcus, that's incredible. When? Where? Tell me everything. He filled her in on the details, and they made plans to celebrate that weekend. But as the excitement faded, Marcus felt a familiar fear creeping back in. What if they Googled? What if they found the stories about the scandal at Riverside, or worse, the recent drama at Sterling Tech? What if his past destroyed this opportunity before it even began? Emma seemed to read his mind. Stop spiraling, she said firmly. Dr. Rosewood already knows everything. My mother made sure of it. She didn't just write you a letter of recommendation. She called the dean personally and explained the entire situation. Who you were, what happened at Riverside, why you deserve a second chance. If they're offering you an interview, it's because they see past the scandal to the teacher you are. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. Your mother did that? Without telling me? She didn't want to get your hopes up in case it didn't work out, Emma explained, but she's been making calls on your behalf for weeks. She believes in you, Marcus. We both do. The interview at Westfield College was scheduled for Tuesday afternoon, which meant Marcus would have to take time off from his shift at Sterling Tech. He submitted the request through the proper channels, expecting the usual bureaucratic delay. Instead, he received an immediate approval along with a note from Victoria herself. Take all the time you need. Knock them dead. You've got this. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude so intense it was almost painful. Victoria Chun had gone from being a distant, intimidating figure to being one of his fiercest advocates. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The day of the interview arrived with crisp autumn weather and clear blue skies. Emma insisted on driving him to Westfield, claiming she wanted to see the campus and that Marcus was too nervous to drive safely. She was right on both counts. As they drove through the countryside, watching the city give way to rolling hills covered in gold and crimson leaves, Marcus tried to prepare himself for disappointment. He had been here before, sitting across from hiring committees, answering questions, feeling the weight of judgment. It never ended well. But this time was different. From the moment he walked into Dr. Rosewood's office, he felt welcomed rather than scrutinized. The hiring committee consisted of 5 professors, all of whom had clearly read his application materials thoroughly. They asked thoughtful questions about his teaching philosophy, his research interests, his views on how literature could help students navigate difficult personal challenges. And they didn't mention the scandal at Riverside. They didn't ask about Sterling Tech or Victoria Chun. They treated him like a serious candidate whose experience and expertise were valuable. The interview lasted 2 hours, and by the end, Marcus felt energized rather than drained. Dr. Rosewood walked him to the door of the English building, a charming brick structure covered in ivy. Mr. Holland, she said, extending her hand, thank you for coming. We have 2 more candidates to interview, but I want you to know that we were genuinely impressed. You have a gift for talking about literature in a way that makes it come alive. That's rare and precious. Marcus shook her hand, hardly daring to hope. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It means more than you know. As he walked back to the parking lot where Emma was waiting, Marcus looked around the campus. Students sprawled on the grass, reading and talking. Professors walked between buildings, their arms full of books and papers. It was a world he had thought was lost to him forever, and now it felt tantalizingly close. Emma saw his face and knew immediately how it had gone. It was good, wasn't it? It was better than good, Marcus said, pulling her into his arms. It was like coming home. They drove back to the city with the windows down, the autumn air rushing through the car, both of them daring to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were going to work out. 5 days later, Marcus received the call. Dr. Rosewood's voice was warm and professional. Mr. Holland, we'd like to offer you the position of visiting professor for the spring semester. If things go well, there's potential for it to become a tenure-track appointment. The salary isn't what you would have made at a larger university, but we think you'll find our community welcoming and our students eager to learn. Marcus's voice caught. I accept. Thank you. Thank you so much. That evening, Marcus, Emma, and Victoria celebrated at a quiet restaurant overlooking the river. It was the first time the 3 of them had gone out together publicly since everything had happened, and the significance wasn't lost on any of them. Victoria raised her glass in a toast. To new beginnings, she said. To second chances and the courage to take them. To family, because that's what we are now, whether we planned it or not. They clinked glasses, and Marcus looked at the 2 women who had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined. Victoria, the powerful CEO who had learned to value humanity over rules. Emma, the brave woman who had refused to let the world define her worth. And himself, no longer invisible, no longer running, finally ready to step back into the light. As they talked and laughed over dinner, Marcus realized something profound. The night Victoria had caught him kissing Emma in the rain, he had been terrified that it was the end of everything. Instead, it had been the beginning of honesty, of vulnerability, of three people learning to trust each other despite their fears. The rain that night hadn't been a storm that destroyed. It had been a baptism that washed away everything false and left only what was true. His love for Emma, Victoria's love for her daughter, and the unexpected bond between a CEO and a janitor who had both learned that true strength came not from power or position, but from the courage to be fully, authentically human. Victoria looked at him across the table, and there was a knowing smile on her face, as if she understood exactly what he was thinking. "You've come a long way, Marcus Holland," she said quietly. "From the man mopping floors and trying to be invisible to someone who stood in front of a board and spoke truth to power. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of both of you." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you, Victoria. You gave me a chance when you had every reason not to." She shook her head. "No, you gave yourself a chance. I just got out of the way. That's all any of us can do for the people we love. Get out of the way and let them become who they're meant to be." The evening ended with plans for Marcus to give his 2-week notice at Sterling Tech and prepare for his new position at Westfield College. Emma was already looking at apartments near the campus, talking about maybe applying for positions at companies in the area. Victoria was supportive but sad, knowing that her daughter would be leaving the city, but she also understood that letting go was part of loving well. As they said their goodbyes in the parking lot, Victoria hugged them both. "Visit often," she said. "And remember, you always have a home here. Always." 6 months later, on a bright April morning, Marcus stood in front of a classroom at Westfield College, his hands slightly trembling as he wrote the day's topic on the whiteboard. Introduction to Contemporary American Literature. 23 students sat before him, their faces a mixture of curiosity, boredom, and the particular anxiety that comes with the first day of a new class. Marcus took a deep breath and turned to face them, and in that moment he felt the last piece of his broken life snap back into place. This was where he belonged, not mopping floors in the middle of the night, not hiding from his past, but here, sharing his passion for literature with young people who were just beginning to discover their own voices. "Welcome," he said, his voice steady and warm. "I'm Professor Holland, and before we dive into syllabi and reading lists, I want to tell you a story." He saw a few students exchange glances. Professors didn't usually start the semester with stories, and they started with rules and expectations and warnings about plagiarism. But Marcus had learned something important over the past year. The best teaching, like the best living, began with truth and vulnerability. 3 years ago, I lost everything," he continued. "My career, my reputation, my sense of who I was. I spent those years working as a janitor, trying to be invisible, trying to convince myself that the person I used to be was gone forever." He paused, seeing that he now had every student's attention. But then, something happened. I met someone who reminded me that loss doesn't have to be permanent, that we can rebuild ourselves from the ruins of our old lives, that the stories we tell about ourselves matter, and we have the power to change those stories. He smiled. "This semester we're going to read books about people doing exactly that. Characters who lose everything and find the courage to start over. Characters who refuse to accept the identities others force on. Characters who discover that the most important journey is the one from who we think we should be to who we actually are." One student, a young woman with bright eyes and an eager expression, raised her hand. "Professor Holland, is that story about you? Is it a true story?" Marcus nodded, every word. "And I'm telling you because I want you to understand that literature isn't just about analyzing texts and writing papers. It's about understanding the human experience, about seeing ourselves in stories and learning from the journeys of others. So yes, this class will challenge you academically, but I also hope it challenges you personally. I hope it makes you think about your own story and how you want to tell it." The class began in earnest then, and Marcus lost himself in the familiar rhythm of teaching. Asking questions, drawing connections, watching understanding dawn on students' faces. By the time the hour ended, he felt more alive than he had in years. As students filed out, several stopped to thank him or ask questions, and Marcus recognized the feeling blooming in his chest. Purpose. He had found his purpose again, and this time he wasn't going to let fear or shame or other people's judgments take it away from him. Emma was waiting for him outside the building, leaning against a tree with the easy confidence of someone who had finally figured out where she belonged. She had landed a position at a sustainable tech startup in the nearby town, a small company with big ambitions and a culture that valued integrity over profit margins. It was everything her previous job hadn't been. A place where she could do meaningful work without compromising her values. "How was it?" she asked, falling into step beside him as they walked across campus. "It was perfect," Marcus said, taking her hand. "It was everything I hoped it would be." Emma squeezed his hand. "I'm so proud of you. You know that, right? You've come so far." They walked to a small coffee shop just off campus, their new routine on days when Emma could take an extended lunch break. As they sat by the window, watching students hurry between classes, Marcus reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. A year ago, he had been invisible, working a job he was overqualified for, convinced that he didn't deserve anything better. Now he was Professor Holland again, respected and valued, building a new life in a place that appreciated what he had to offer. And he owed it all to a chance meeting in a coffee shop and the courage to be vulnerable with someone who saw past his shame to the person underneath. Victoria visited them the following weekend, driving up from the city in her sleek electric car, looking slightly out of place in the small college town, but she adapted quickly, trading her usual designer suits for casual slacks and a comfortable sweater, joining them for a walking tour of the campus and dinner at their favorite local restaurant. Over pasta and wine, they caught up on each other's lives. Victoria talked about changes she was implementing at Sterling Tech, new policies around workplace culture and employee wellness that had been inspired by everything that had happened with Marcus and Brennan. She had created a mentorship program pairing executives with employees from different departments, breaking down the invisible walls that had separated people by position and status. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said at the board meeting, Marcus," Victoria told him, "about what real leadership looks like. You were right. I had forgotten that companies are made up of people, not just profit margins and strategic initiatives. So I'm trying to build something different now, a place where someone like you wouldn't feel like they had to be invisible." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. "That means everything, Victoria. You're changing lives without even realizing." Later that evening, after Victoria had retired to her hotel, Marcus and Emma walked quiet streets of the town hand in hand. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the smell of spring blossoms and distant rain. They found themselves at a small park, the same place where they had come on their first weekend in town, when everything was still new and uncertain. They sat on a bench overlooking a pond, and Emma leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder. "Do you ever think about that night in the parking lot?" she asked quietly. "When my mom caught us kissing in the rain," Marcus smiled. "All the time. I was so terrified. I thought it was the end of everything. But it wasn't," Emma said. "The beginning. The beginning of us being honest. The beginning of my mom becoming who she really is instead of who she thought she had to be. The beginning of you finding your way back to yourself." She lifted her head to look at him. "That rainstorm washed away all our pretenses and left only what was real, and what was real was strong enough to weather everything that came after." Marcus pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "Emma-chan, I've spent most of my life running from confrontation, from pain, from the possibility of failure. But you taught me something crucial. You taught me that the only thing worth running toward is love. You saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself. You stood beside me when it would have been easier to walk away." He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "So I'm asking you, will you marry me? Will you keep teaching me how to be brave?" Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling wider than Marcus had ever seen. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." She kissed him then, and it felt like that first kiss in the rain, desperate and joyful and full of promise. When they pulled apart, she was laughing through her tears. "We have to call my mom. She's going to lose her mind." They called Victoria from the park bench, putting the phone on speaker. Victoria answered on the first ring. "Emma, is everything okay?" "Mom," Emma said, her voice trembling with happiness. "Marcus just proposed. I'm getting married." The silence on the other end lasted just long enough for Emma to worry. Then Victoria's voice came through, thick with emotion. "Oh, sweetheart. Oh, that's wonderful. That's the best news I've heard in years." She paused, and they could hear her composing herself. "Marcus, are you there?" "I'm here, Victoria," he said. "Thank you for everything. For taking a chance on us, for being the person brave enough to let your daughter make her own choices." Victoria's laugh was watery but genuine. "You two saved me just as much as I like to think I saved you. You reminded me what matters. Family, love, being human." She took a breath. "Now, when is the wedding? Because I have some ideas about venues and I refuse to let my only daughter get married in some courthouse with bad lighting." Emma laughed. "Mom, we literally just got engaged 30 seconds ago. Can we have a minute?" "Fine," Victoria conceded. "But I'm starting a list, and I'm calling a wedding planner. And Marcus, you're going to need a proper suit. That old interview suit won't cut it." They talked for another 20 minutes, Victoria's excitement building with each passing moment until Emma finally told her mother they needed to go. After they hung up, Emma and Marcus sat in comfortable silence, watching the moonlight dance across the pond. "Your mom is going to turn this into the event of the century, isn't she?" Marcus said. "Probably," Emma admitted. "But she's earned it. She's earned the right to celebrate love after spending so many years hiding from it." The wedding took place 3 months later in a beautiful garden venue halfway between the city and Westfield College. It was intimate but elegant, with just close friends and family. Gene was there, wearing his best suit and beaming with pride. Dr. Rosewood came, along with several of Marcus's students who had become like family to him. Emma's friends from her new company attended, as did several people from Sterling Tech who had been touched by the story of the CEO who had chosen love over rules. Victoria walked Emma down the aisle, and there wasn't a dry eye in the venue. As she placed Emma's hand in Marcus's, she whispered something that only they could hear. "Take care of each other. That's all that matters. Love well, and be kind. It's the only thing that lasts. The ceremony was beautiful and heartfelt, filled with readings from the literature that had brought Marcus back to himself. When they exchanged vows, Marcus promised to always see Emma, to never let her become invisible, to stand beside her through every storm. Emma promised to be his home, his safe harbor, the place he could always return to when the world felt too heavy. At the reception, Victoria gave a toast that brought everyone to tears. She talked about rules and how she had spent her whole life building them, believing they would protect her from pain. She talked about the night she caught her daughter kissing a janitor in the rain and how her first instinct had been to end it, to fire Marcus and forbid the relationship. But then she had made a different choice. She had chosen to trust, to listen, to see the love instead of the inconvenience, and that choice had changed everything. It had given her daughter back. It had taught her what real strength looked like. It had reminded her that the best things in life were the ones that couldn't be controlled or predicted or fit into neat categories. As the evening wore on and the dancing began, Marcus found himself standing at the edge of the garden, watching Emma laugh with her mother, their heads close together, their bond stronger than it had ever been. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from a broken professor to an invisible janitor, to a man who had found the courage to reclaim his life, from someone who hid from love to someone who had built a family from honesty and vulnerability. It had been the hardest road he had ever walked, but it had led him exactly where he needed to be. Later that night, as they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, it started to rain. Not a downpour like the night Victoria had confronted them, but a gentle spring rain that made everything smell fresh and new. Emma grabbed Marcus's hand and pulled him outside, spinning in the rain with her white dress swirling around her. Marcus joined her and they danced in the parking lot, laughing and soaking wet, while their guests watched from the doorway and cheered. Victoria stood among them, her hand pressed to her heart, tears streaming down her face. But this time they were tears of joy, pure, uncomplicated joy, the kind that comes from watching people you love choose happiness over fear, authenticity over pretense, love over everything else. And in that moment, as Marcus kissed his wife in the rain while Victoria and their friends celebrated, all the pain of the past melted away. The scandal at Riverside, the months of invisibility, the fear and shame and hiding. None of it mattered anymore. What mattered was this: love that had survived judgment and emerged stronger. A family built not on blood or obligation, but on choice and courage. And the knowledge that sometimes the worst storms bring the greatest transformations, washing away everything false until only truth remains. The rain fell, the music played, and three people who had all been lost in their own ways finally found their way home. That's the end of this story, friends, but you know what? The conversation doesn't have to stop here. Drop a comment below and tell us where this story reached you today. What moment hit you hardest? Was it the rainstorm confrontation, the board meeting, or maybe that final wedding scene? And hey, if this story reminded you that it's never too late for a second chance, that love is worth fighting, and that the bravest thing you can do is choose to be vulnerable, then maybe give it a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear that their story isn't over yet, that they can rebuild from the ruins and find something beautiful on the other side. Subscribe if you want more stories about redemption, about finding courage when everything falls apart, about the quiet strength it takes to open your heart after it's been broken, because these stories matter. Your story matters, and sometimes we all need to be reminded that the most powerful transformations happen when we stop hiding and start living. Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting this story into your day. Until we meet again in another tale, remember to be the kind of person who sees others, who stands up for what's right, and who chooses love even when it's complicated, especially when it's complicated. Take care of each other out there.